call to order this September 10th special meeting of the Monterey Peninsula Community College Governing Board at 3:02 p.m. If we could have a roll call, please.
Certainly. Chair Yuri Anderson.
Here.
Vice Chair Lauren Steck.
Here.
Trustee Rosalind Green. She is absent. Trustee Marilyn Dunn Gustafson.
Here.
And Trustee Rick Johnson.
Here.
Great. I think Trustee Johnson, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this afternoon, so everybody else could mute themselves and stand if you're able.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, so we're on item 1C, which is approval of the agenda. One item agenda today, information session. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right, motion by Trustee Steck, second by Trustee Johnson. Can we have a roll call vote, please? Or sorry, is there any member of the public who would like to make a comment on the agenda? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Yuri Anderson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Lauren Steck.
Yes.
Trustee Marilyn Dunn Gustafson.
Excuse me. Yes, I was muted.
Thank you. Trustee Rick Johnson.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
Thank you. All right, next we'll move on to public comment. If there's any member of the public who would like to address this board on an item not on the agenda but within our purview, please raise your hand and you'll have 3 minutes to do so. I see Mr. Rick Hoyer. So Rick, go ahead and make your comment.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board. Actually, I'm deeply disappointed that the MPC chose to use college funds to campaign for Measure V. I received a mailer from the MPC, which was quite obviously a campaign piece, even though it may not have technically said vote for this. The intent of what it was for was very clear. I'm sure you'll hear legal comments from folks and stuff that you can do it as long as you don't advocate a position. But to say that that piece was not advocating a position and was solely quote unquote educational is disingenuous at best. You should have left it to your campaign committee to campaign and not use limited college funds. I thought you all made it clear that you weren't going to be spending any, but then this piece comes in my mail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoyer. Is there any other member of the public who would like to make a comment this afternoon? You can use the raise hand feature, or if you're on the phone, press *9. Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment and move on to item 3A, information item, which is a first read of MPC's Accjc midterm report. I don't know if it's Mr. Martin or Dr. Pacheco who's going to start us off.
Yes, thank you, Chair Anderson, and thank you, board members, for your time this afternoon. This is a follow-up to the presentation that Dr. Pacheco provided at the last regular board meeting. We are in the final preparation stages of developing and submitting our Accjc midterm report. MPC is accredited through the Accjc, and based on our accreditation standards, every 7 years we go through an official accreditation cycle. The midterm report signifies the halfway point through that 7-year period, and ultimately is a report that is intended to prove that we are meeting the standards, because that has already been proven. This report is intended to identify the actionable improvement items that were provided to MPC or areas where we are meeting the standards, but there was some room for potential improvements based on the visiting committee's recommendations. So this report just addresses those items, as well as some items that we internally identified as areas that we could potentially improve upon. So the report that's in front of the board this afternoon for a first reading is ultimately a collection of items that we have done to not only address some of those recommendations from the external visiting team, but also some recommendations for improvement that we identified internally. We are about a month away from an official due date to the Accjc. Based on the cycle, the report needs to be submitted to the accrediting body no later than October 15th. We present it to the board this afternoon as a first read in an attempt to address any questions that the board members may have. But ultimately, we will bring it back at the September regular meeting for a second read, as well as an additional opportunity to answer any questions that the board or public may have regarding the report. So with that said, that is what we have for an introduction this afternoon. Mr. Pacheco did do the presentation at the last meeting, which covered the report more in detail. But ultimately, this is an opportunity for the board and the public to ask any questions or provide any feedback on our initial first draft of the Accjc midterm report. Thank you, Chair Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I also would like to point out that Trustee Green has joined the meeting. So, Rosalind, glad that you're able to be here this afternoon, that we all get to talk about this pretty dense and great report together. So we'll start if there are any questions from board members on the draft midterm report that they'd like to ask staff. Go ahead.
I will have a few questions, but I'm not sure exactly what the format that you want to do is. The public should have an opportunity to weigh in also, and I don't know if they want to go first or if you want them to go first. I'm sure we'll all have questions or comments.
I'm going to go ahead and take questions from the board first.
And then we'll do questions from the board, then questions from the public, and then anything else. Is this the board's opportunity to talk or question? That's fine.
Yeah, you'll have a chance to make some comments again after the public does if you'd like. So you could ask any questions or make any statements you want, Trustee.
Well, I'll start it off then. Overall, I thought this is a fine report. Yuri also introduced it as a great report. I think it's quite good. I think it is very dense. So overall, I think it was a very fine report. I have several questions and comments. I did find one typo and maybe a couple of other places where another word, or you could add a word, but that's all that I found. I did have trouble reading the two tables that are in the report, and I'll go over them if we go over page. I don't know if we'll ever do page by page, but I will ask questions about the tables. I also think that we might want to consistently spell out the first use of the various acronyms that we have. And I know that this is created for a specific audience. They may not have trouble with those acronyms, but I did. And so I thought it'd be nice to spell them out perhaps in each section, but certainly the first time that they're used in the document. And then I think it's wise to put in some dates. And I'll go over those specifically as we go on. But I'll start with those comments, and that's not really any questions yet, but I will have questions.
Trustee Dunn-Gupson, you're unmuted. Did you want to have something to say, or you just? No. Okay.
I'm listening.
Okay. Well, so I don't know that we need to go page by page, but if somebody wants to get us kicked off with a question on a page, and then if anybody else has a similar question that relates to it, you can either add on or you can mark off maybe we're asking each other's questions. So
all right, so I'll try again.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have small things and a big question. And the big question that I have, and this is in general, The structure of the document is there's recommendations, and we assess whether or not we've met those recommendations, met the goals. And I'm sure that there is some technical reason for saying we either met a goal or the goal is still in progress. But if I read through, as I read through the document, there were a number of instances for a number of specific recommendations where I would have, before reading the conclusion, or before reading the conclusion, I would have come to a slightly different conclusion than the report did. I don't know that I'm, I just don't know what the technical definition of meeting each one of those recommendations is, and so maybe we could start there. That's the big question that I have. Again, I don't see it's the problem whatsoever, but it was hard for me to. It was not predictable for me to get to those conclusions. That's all.
I shared that feedback, and one in particular that I kind of had a question mark on the assessment of the goal being met for the recommendation was related to recommendation 10 on the student support services around the Marina Education Center. So maybe that could be an example of that instance and how you define the goal being met or not.
Well, I'll start off. It is an expectation, one of the requirements. Now, neither the recommendations or the AIPs need to be completed at this stage. They need to be completed by the time that we have our next institutional review. So the midterm is a progress report on it. I do have, while I speak, I'm getting over to recommendation 10. We do have the writers here as well with me, and I certainly don't want to speak too much for the Marina area. I know, I believe Lakeisha and Larry are on the phone, or actually on the Zoom. I'm wondering if perhaps we can display the recommendation 10 for the folks in the room. Can we share that? Do you want me to share my screen? What would you like us to do?
You are a co-host.
Okay, then I will share my screen. And you should be now seeing the document. And let me get to where recommendation 10 is. And Larry and Lakeisha, are you on the call as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay, it is on page.
Another meeting, but I'm on the call.
All right, I'm getting it. Sorry, I'm just manually pushing this through. I'm going to get to page 55. Maybe I can go directly here and go to 55. So here's recommendation 10. And generally, the recommendation 10 dealt with assuring that all student services provided at the Marina Center be consistently scheduled and published. One of the key aspects of the standards is that wherever there's a location, whether online or whether on the main campus or whether at an external site, that while the services don't have to be equal, they all have to meet the standard. And so I'm wondering if Larry and Lakeisha had maybe some insights as to the analysis and then the conclusion.
Sure, I can add a little bit of insight. So when this recommendation came along in our site visit, again, the site visit is a site visit. Whether I agree or not is another thing. We did get a recommendation, but I would say at the time, I quite honestly did not agree with the recommendation, as with some other recommendations that came through. I believed at the time, our college was providing commensurate level services at both the Monterey campus and the Marina campus. So with that being said, what we have done to communicate that a bit more through the midterm report is sort of outline some key and specific elements which student services has done and will continue to do, and will enhance when necessary to ensure that we are delivering commensurate services. We have developed a website where it does pertain to services that are available. It's posted on the each of the areas, main office areas at the Marina Ed Center. We actually go out to instructor classrooms and make presentations about services that are available. We created a banner that shows a number of different services that are available. So we've done a myriad of things to what I believe to increase the communication. Although we may have been out there providing commensurate level services, the communication I agreed we could enhance. And I think through this midterm report, you will see because of the evidence, we did increase the communication mechanism via the website, postings, emails to instructors, letting them know that we were out there. In addition to that, we have staff that have been cross-trained to do first level assessment of student needs, and then make referrals to the appropriate level department if necessary. But all in all, as it relates to the item number 10, I believe we definitely, through the evidence presented here, have enhanced our communication to the delivery of student services at the Marina Ed Center. What takes it one step further in this online new virtual format, the silver lining in that is that many of our services are even more available in this virtual format, given the accessibility of online and over the phone and via email. So I think we definitely hit the mark here, and I can try to answer any additional questions that may come out regarding recommendation number 10.
So if I circle it back to the question I heard Trustee Steck asking, and Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, it was more kind of, is there some sort of rubric that defines what met means or in progress or something like that, that we consistently use to make that determination? And is that what you were asking, Lauren? More or less? It is more or less. And recommendation 10 wasn't one that I particularly circled for that particular issue. Mm-hmm. It was nice to hear that, you know, the logic that Larry was using when he in writing this thing up. I appreciate that. And I'll circle back to some other ones, but on recommendation 10, I had lots of questions, which we won't go through here because that's not the purpose. But I did think that in the second paragraph and the third paragraph, they're both on the screen now. The second one starts off at the time of the last full site visit. And that got me to wondering, okay, when was that site visit? Is this the 2017 visit? Is this, you know, when is it? And there are different recommendation sections in which there's similar wording, but then it said at the time of the last site visit in April of 2017 or something like that. And I was thinking that might have helped in this particular place because there are lots of times, lots of different visits that we're talking about and assignments that we're talking about. And it's easier for me to read it if I can put the thing in context. So the last full site visit on paragraph 2, and since the time of the last institutional evaluation in paragraph 3, I think both of those might have benefited a little bit from having a date in there. So I didn't have to go back to the very front section to figure out when you're talking about. But Yuri, that is exactly what I was talking about, but I would start on, for the big picture things, I would start on recommendation 5. Or actionable improvement plan 5 on page 25. So if you're done with 10. Oh yeah, well, so at 10, I'll say to Larry, I thought everything that was articulated about what is being done to ensure students have information about the services available to them was great, and was really exciting to hear all the ways that we're working to make sure that that information is available and bringing additional resources to that center with thoughts about increasing those. I guess for me, in the terms of this goal has been met, for me, that's one of those goals that's never met, right? You're always striving to do more. So to say the goal's been met, I was like, no, there's always more we can do.
Yeah, I don't think that's what, yeah, obviously this is ongoing. And you did see in some of the conclusions where we did write ongoing efforts
Mhm.
are there. I guess we certainly don't mean to think that this work is stopped or ceased. I guess the question was if the recommendation was to improve the communication, then there is no rubric provided by the commission. What it is an examination of the, excuse me, the totality of the facts, the writers and a number of the key people. We've had lots of individuals go in and read and provide comment, but it's an examination of the totality of the facts and then a conclusion among professionals of did we meet this recommendation, the spirit of the recommendation, where we felt that we needed a little more work or we felt that perhaps we were not quite there, then we certainly added that. But there was, for recommendation 10, there was a significant number of steps, right? The hiring of the dean and a number of things that were not necessarily fully in place at the time of the last full accreditation visit. And with all of the work that's been done there. Now this is written not in the context of COVID. We called up the commission and the commission indicated that we should provide answers based on the recommendation, and which is the way we wrote it. But if there is no rubric, there is no evaluation of a score or something. It's just an examination of the facts by the professionals who provided the answers. Trustee Sec, did you say page 25?
Well, you know, I could go, but then I would go back to the first thing. I would I don't want to belabor this too long, but if I could just do my little thing about all the things leading up to that, I'd also be grateful. So if you start at page 9, which is the very first thing, it's report preparation page, and that's where you come up with all the dates and the first time site visit. The only thing I would mention is I forgot what the ALO is, and the ALO is in the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, 3rd line, never spelled out. And I'm sure I knew last week what the ALO is, but can you see it, Bob?
I sure do.
Yeah.
ALO is the accreditation liaison officer, and if that is the first location for ALO, we certainly can spell it out.
Yeah, do that. You have AG, ASAG, SAG, and PAG, and those are things that I think everybody knows, but they are never spelled out here. Right below it, you do have quality focus essays, but later on you call it QFE 1 and 2, and that's the first use of QFE, and then that doesn't appear until way late in the thing again. But that was the thing that tripped me up. What's a QFE? I thought.
Well, I wrote those notes down, and I'll work with the editors to make sure that every first appearance.
Okay, then I don't need to tell you. I've circled some of these things, and after we don't have to waste the board meetings time with this, and I can talk to you afterwards on that. On actionable plan 2, which is on page 15.
Thank you.
I just, in the very first paragraph, at the time of the last full self-evaluation, I think you should have a date there. Again, it's inconsistent.
Okay. Maybe perhaps what we can do is connect with some of the technical edits. I can get them.
Yeah, later on. But so then we should go up to item 5 or action item 5, whatever page that was, on page 25.
Sure.
Actually, the conclusion's on page 27. So this was we're up to 4.
Might be. Are you looking at the version that that was not the? I have the latest updated one.
Oh, okay. So
you are on actionable improvement plan number 2.
I'm on actionable improvement plan 5 was the first one that I had a question about. The
okay. Let me scurry over there.
Sorry. Yeah, my version is a little bit older than yours, or newer.
Right. And you want the conclusion, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
So Maybe I'm wrong. Mine says this actionable improvement plan has been completed, and I just read your thing that says it's in progress.
Yeah, so one of the things I tried to make clear and didn't do a good job was that this document is still under consideration and review, and there's lots of discussions. For example, we removed one of the charts when an inserted table or chart confuses more than it explains. That's usually a sign of a report. And we had one that had a report in there from the software, generated by the software, but we felt upon reflection that it did not clarify or align necessarily with narrative that we felt was important. But we did. It sounds like we anticipated your question, Trustee
For
Steck.
that one, yeah, you sure did. I said, why is this completed? The paragraph before says it's still in progress. But okay, that's an answer. Then go to 6. I'm very proud of this. You corrected the only other typo I found before I got this version of the document, but here's the only one that I have if you haven't already corrected it too.
So I'm sorry, can you lead me to a page?
Well, my pages are different from yours. It's just the next.
Yeah, but I'll get close.
Number 6, next page.
Number 6, next page. Okay. What paragraph?
So the first line in the second paragraph, well, the first paragraph is the actual plan.
Correct.
I think that it should be allows. The very last word in that line, I think, should be allows.
I'm sorry, you're in the second full paragraph beginning with the tool also?
The tool also, yes. And the last word in that line, I think the allow is modifying tool, which is singular.
Got it.
Oh, that was my one typo, or the one typo. So if you got a 100-page document with one typo, I usually do a typo or two in the first paragraph of whatever I write. So I think it's pretty amazing. But
I've noted that.
Okay, so you have, for your conclusion on this one, that we've made significant progress, and it sounded to me like that one's been completed.
Let's go back and see which one this is. So this is multi-year budgeting and planning. So I'm gonna have Steve and David warming up in the bullpen while I frame it. But it says, we'll implement new tools for multi-year budgeting, budget planning and monitoring as recommended by the CBT in order to improve its budget development and resource allocation processes to reflect enrollment projections, state apportionment, and increase mandated costs. And indeed, there's been a significant amount of work on this. Are you saying that so you feel we've undervalued our efforts?
I believe so.
I don't know if Steve or David have some insights on whether we felt that we are indeed done with the 5-year plan or the multi-year planning, and maybe some thoughts of what we think we need to do to complete what the actionable improvement plan set forth for us to accomplish.
Sure, Dr. Pacheco, and thank you, Dr. Steck, for the question. And in regards to the multi-year planning and budget tool, the reason why I believe we have not indicated that we are fully there yet is because in the spirit of continuous improvement, we're always looking to modify and improve our budgeting and our forecasting methods. With the upcoming implementation of the student-centered funding formula and the statewide deferrals that are going to impact us as well as every other educational entity, we're still getting that information and developing and honing in our forecasting models and our techniques and our tools. So that's ultimately an ongoing process. So to say we've found the perfect tool that works in every situation, I think would be a bit misleading because I don't think a tool exists of that nature. So it's really to show that we've made substantial progress. Based on the information that we have, we've developed a 5-year projection tool that we included in the budget. But ultimately, we are continuously monitoring the effectiveness of that tool, the components of that tool, to make sure we adapt it to any additional budget information that comes from the state.
So now I'm learning that it's really more or less kind of slightly sort of up to the writers as to whether they decided that, well, this thing could be completed or maybe it'll never be completed. And if that's the case, that's pretty much most of the rest of my substantive comments. I thought we were underselling how much we've done. but I certainly understand the perspective of there's always more to do. In which case I will shut up now.
Well, thank you. And you will, there have been a couple of comments that this is awfully deep and thick document. I would say that when the commission gets this, by the way, just to let you know, I thought I did in the presentation, but I don't know, is we did submit a copy of this to the Accjc for a quick review. I wanted to make sure that our assigned vice president had seen the work that we were doing and the direction that the document was going, and to get any suggestions from them or any issues that they saw as potentially affecting the review later on. And they came back with a glowing email saying, look, I would just make a couple technical changes here and there. But I would say as midterms go, this is a very full document. And I tried to make it full for a couple of reasons. I've been trying with the SLO symposium that we had last year and a few other things that we're doing to make it abundantly clear in the commissioners' minds and in the commission office that MPC is taking accreditation very seriously and that we are going to self-evaluate thoroughly. And so when they get the document, I'm hoping that they see that. But this is, as midterm reports go, this is a rather thick and full document. It is.
I do feel like I'm hogging up all the time, Yuri. I do have a couple other questions, but I feel like I ought to relax and let other people take the lead for a minute, if there is anybody else who wants to take the lead.
Okay. Trustee Johnson, any questions or comments from you?
There I am. No, I'm just waiting with bated breath to hear what Lauren has. But at this point, no, my only comment is this was just an amazing document to read. And we know so many of the things that have been done since those dark days when we were out of accreditation. And it's just so succinct. It just leads us right through it. So that would be my comment.
Trustee Dunn-Gustafson, any questions or comments you want us to make this time?
No, I would just say, I like Rick. I find it a very thorough, very complete, well done document. I certainly am not prepared to go through it the way it is.
Okay. And Trustee Green, any specific questions?
I don't have any questions either. And like the others, I do feel like this was well put together. And it was really an easy read. And so I like that part. But I do want to encourage both you and Lauren to continue to ask your questions. Those are very helpful. And when you ask them, I say, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. So it's good. You two can take it away. I think that it's given the rest of us answers to questions we probably didn't think of. So I appreciate both of you guys' questions and comments.
Well, Trustee Steck, if you're okay, I'll take a little airtime for a minute. So I started off by saying that I just thought it was a great report and dense. And so I'll make my comments, which is, it was incredible to read how much really good and important work is going on, and like how much staff has just dug in for the last 4 years to bring MPC forward, not just from what you had identified as challenges or what the commission had identified, but just really good work across the organization. And I wanted to make sure that you knew how good as a board member it felt to see all of that, and to feel so confident in what the team is doing, and to thank you for doing that work for our community. And it just made me feel like there was real opportunities for increased board engagement, for us to build knowledge about the work that's being done, to use the data that you are warehousing to track that and using to make decisions, for us to be engaged in more receipt of that data so that we can be making better policy decisions and actions to support the work moving forward. So those are my overarching comments as I walk through. There's a bug just flying around me right here. So as I go to my questions, I'll just say that I framed my questions around how can I as a trustee communicate this information to the public about the good work that's going on in MPC, and where were there issues with the communication that I didn't feel like I could interpret that in plain language, because some of it was really technical language. And then also, as a trustee, where could we put increased board focus for our own learning? And where did we need to spend more time learning? So those are where my questions are really coming from as I move forward. So starting back at page 9, which is around the report preparation, paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. And because we're looking at an older document than you, always let me know if whatever I bring up has been changed. In my report is the paragraph that started in preparation for this report. It talks about in spring 2020, the college approaching the commission about ceasing efforts on a QF3, and then deciding to work on it again. And I was just wondering if you could explain that action a little bit. Like, do we have the ability to just stop working on something? Or?
No, that's a great question. When the last accreditation cycle went through, the Accjc instituted this idea of creating innovation plans. So whenever you see QFE, quality focus essay, and translate to innovation plan, think outside the box. We get everything else you're talking about are what your systems in place should fix, right? You find problems, you see if your systems fix them, and you identify them. The QFE was you identify some areas where your existing systems are not going to fix them. You must think outside the box. You must think about new ways to get them done. The college, you were one of the first colleges to do them, these QFEs. And there was very little guidance. And I would argue that the 3 QFEs the college identified were indeed system-wide improvement plans. One was for TrackDat. We need a central location where all the learning data can go and reports can be generated. The second one was the enrollment management, which was being able to develop effective schedules and multi-year scheduling and using data to inform the enrollment decisions. And that was another tool that would get done. And the third one was the ERP, which is a large database. And I'll stop talking to let some of the experts hop on in. But soon after, about a year after, the Accjc said, no, these QFEs are supposed to be related to student learning. And they should be connected with student learning measures. And you saw that in the second section of the midterm. So as the work started to get going on and being done, we began to reflect that for systemic reasons about the ERP, but as well as reporting on the ERP, that the ERP itself was not really connected to student learning and achievement like the commission had wanted it to be. And so we approached the commission to say, we have 3 QFEs. This third one does not really appear to be a QFE where we can report learning and achievement connection, which you saw in the other 2. Plus, there was some issue about when and how we were going to address the ERP, and an ERP is not required by the standards. And so we approached them, explained, and they agreed that that the QFE 3 was not necessarily associated with student learning, and it wasn't our fault. We were trying to, the college tried to be very broad. But I thought maybe I could kick it to David, or I don't know who else is on the line to be able to talk about the manner and method that the college will think about an ERP or a database and be able to deal with it. And we explained to the commission that we were not going to stop the purpose of the ERP, but reporting it as a QFE was really difficult for us because we couldn't have a one-to-one correspondence with student achievement and learning. But David, is that something you feel you can elaborate on? Because you were on the call with me with the ACCJC.
Absolutely, Dr. Pacheco, and thank you for that context. And I do just have a bit more to add in regards to our approach concerning the enterprise resource planning, the ERP system. In the past, we've identified it specifically, as mentioned, as a specific quality focus essay item, number 3. In lieu of continuing that tracking or reporting process, we decided to roll it up into our broad facilities and technology master plan and really include it as part of an overarching plan in improving our campus-wide technology infrastructure and systems. So instead of specifically identifying it separately, it is included now, but included as part of our comprehensive facilities and technology master plans.
Thank you. So I guess that was one of those sort of learning areas, both for the report and just for the board in general.
Well, maybe I could go in there and add a couple sentences to explain that a little clearer. Maybe the commission would know it, but we could probably add a couple transition sentences in there that would let it more. It's a good question though, trustee.
Thank you. Okay, so I promise I don't have a question on every single page. I said a few at the beginning because, you know, I was precious when I was reading the beginning of the report. So on my page 11, which is actual improvement plan number 1, I was surprised to see the framing of, so there's the actual improvement plan that's in the italics or italicized, and then it says the goal of this actual improvement plan was for the college to establish a learning assessment committee, and I was surprised to see that that was what was identified as the goal, as opposed to some sort of, when you link it back to assuring quality and institutional effectiveness. Like, it seemed like the LAC was the tool to help us, but I don't, and again, I wasn't here, so maybe that was really the goal. But
no, that's a great question, and as I mentioned, these kind of analysis continue, and you can see in the version that's been updated, we did make changes to it. That was to implement recommendations for improvement. So like yourselves, as more and more eyes get on the document, we're asking the same questions you're asking, which is, was it really the creation of this document? Is that the right verb choice we used when matching and mapping it to it? So you can see in that first sentence, we actually did that it was to implement the recommendations of that committee, not necessarily to start things up. So we promise we didn't cheat and look at your notes, but there was the same anticipation that you have as we looked at the comment saying, wait a minute, this verb choice probably isn't the most accurate. It really was to implement the recommendations for improvement that an already existing committee had made, and then to bake it into ongoing integrated planning processes. So the answer to your question is yes, and we made that change.
nice. And I guess because again, it was, you know, thinking, how are we framing this in what is the outcome for our students and their success is kind of where my brain was when I was thinking about that. And then in that same actual improvement plan, towards the end of it, it talks about, with respect to the disaggregation of learning assessment results, the commission removed the expectation around disaggregation.
Yeah, in the 2014 standards, the commission added a standard that said, see, we've historically disaggregated, there's 2 types of data about students, learning and success, learning and achievement. The success and achievement is what the kid puts in his pocket, and the learning is what the kid, I say kid, I'm getting old, sorry, trustee, is what the learner puts in their brain. And so they added a standard that said, not only must you disaggregate the achievement data, which the board sees all the time, right? You had a great presentation last week from Dr. Ryan that disaggregated. So we were used to that. We're used to disaggregating GPAs and whatnot. But the colleges never really did it with learning. So they added it as an expectation. Now you must have to disaggregate it with learning. The problem for the commission was this became an administration nightmare because much of the learning assessment from faculty are qualitative, right? There's narratives about what that student did. So then getting into the data, or classes that only had 10 people in them, it was difficult for them to say this learning data was disaggregated. And so what the commission took a step back, and in 2016, also as part of the settlement with the CCSF lawsuit, they took that requirement out. So we got a recommendation to disaggregate because that was the standards at the time. You know what I mean? Make sure you meet the standard, but make sure you guys implement this disaggregation of learning. But the commission found that at least at this stage of data collection, a learning versus achievement is too different. So they took it out to give colleges an opportunity to get good at student learning and revisit the idea of disaggregation of data for learning after the colleges got more experienced and the commission could get more professional advice on how this could be done. So we did not report on it because the standard was removed itself. Does that make sense? And it's an interesting question because how do we examine learning and the learning styles and differences and experiences of students, and how do we take data from that learning to alter the way we teach, to alter the way we build curriculum? It's just that the manner and method we collect it now, it just doesn't lend itself. So the commission took it out to remove the burden on colleges and said that they would revisit it in coming standards when they felt that the examination of learning matured a bit.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to kick it back to Lawrence soon. I'm getting close to where his first number, page 25 was, so I'm going to jump to there in a second. But on my report, it was page 16 in actual improvement plan 2 under the sustainable assessment practices heading.
Okay.
We used the phrasing in the second paragraph, tracking course currency. I didn't know what that meant. And then the whole kind of next sentence, couple sentences underneath it, just I found confusing. So again, from that frame of, I'm trying to talk to my community members who care about MPC, like, what am I trying to say here? And maybe it's been changed.
Well, let me look for it. And we do have, I believe, the SLO coordinator, Keith Eubanks is on, and Adria's on, and John's on.
I see it down there. In this way, tracking course currency within the assessment cycle allows for consideration. So it's the second paragraph on the second page.
Okay, thank you.
So I found that whole paragraph confusing, is what I'm saying.
The one that begins, the college has reviewed, or to further create a system?
Yeah, that whole paragraph.
Well, if you give me a moment to read and catch up, because I had a heavy hand in it, but I don't know a chapter and verse here, so let me take a look. And if any of the others folks on the line have some explanation, that would be great. Oh. Okay, and I'll certainly throw it out to Keith and others as well to explain. So, and if there's lack of clarity, we can go back in and take a look at it, but I can tell you in substance what we did. So one of the things that the college was really did to help become compliant was create numerators and denominators of what was assessed, what classes were offered, were they assessed. And when you look at those percentages, we would try to get them as close to 100% as we possibly could, right? Sometimes classes get missed. So we examined that when the percentage rates went down, when it looked like we were reporting less courses were being assessed, we want to make sure that that's real, right? We wanted to make sure it wasn't a function of a structure that wasn't working. And when we outreached to faculty, we found that what was largely causing the lower reporting rates was that we had a 2-year cycle for completing the classes. And some of the classes couldn't get offered during that time, or some of the classes perhaps didn't make, or there was an ability to fully complete. And we felt that the low rates that we had to report annually, which by the way are no longer required by the commission, but the rates that we were reporting were artificially low, not because we weren't doing the work, but we had a tight schedule that faculty said, I can't get this done in 2 years. Do you know what I mean? I'm doing it meaningfully. So we then sat back and said, well, wait a minute, maybe we need to reflect on having this a 3-year cycle, right? A cycle where it gives them latitude to complete the assessment. In addition, we had a series of courses, and I'm leaning to Keith Eubanks if he's on the line. We also have a series of courses that aren't really offered that often. They're only offered periodically. So they were considered not being reported. So we created, we altered the cycle to say, let's give faculty a meaningful amount of time to make their changes, and also have some flexibility for those courses like art classes that aren't offered as regularly as others. You know what I mean? We don't want to say that they're not reporting when in fact the class is not there. No, Keith, are you on the line? I saw an 831. Keith is the SLO.
Yes, I'm here.
So maybe a little bit, because you went in front of the Academic Senate to get permission for this cycle change. Recall what the phenomenon was.
Can you the Academic Senate about what specifically?
Well, the issue of why we went from a 2-year to a 3-year assessment cycle. I think trustee question about the thinking behind that.
I
Yeah.
totally understood that. That was really clear in the report. It was just this paragraph that didn't make sense.
Okay. And so what was the question then?
No, I'm not sure. I wanted you to explain on the 3-year cycle. This is maybe a question on clarity. I'm not.
Yeah, and I didn't understand the term tracking course currency.
That was, all right. So if a course has been offered and assessed, it's considered current. It's considered that it is.
Okay, current. I was reading currency like money. I was just like, I don't understand what they're trying to say.
Oh, no, that's a term of art that we can change. No, we're tracking
how current the course is.
Current in their assessment cycle.
Awesome.
Oh,
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For money.
Sorry. Okay, and then let me see. Okay, so another one that I just didn't understand how it was phrased.
Sure.
Was on my page 23, which is under Improvement Plan 4, subheaded Guided Pathways and Outcomes Assessments. The first paragraph under 4 CTE with the bullets. So I keep going up. I think it's on your next page.
CTE.
Go, keep going.
Okay,
so
okay.
Let's see if it's still there or not. It was a phrase that read, meet the state expectations for colleges to foster teaching and learning as more student ready. Yeah, it's still there in that paragraph that starts in the
I see that.
2020. I don't.
Learning to meet state expectations for colleges to foster teaching and learning. Yeah, I think perhaps that's more of a grammatical fix that we can have. I think student ready is a term of art, right? But it seems that maybe we could arrange the clarity of that last clause. That's where the confusion is, right? Foster learning.
So maybe it's that I've never heard this term student ready before, and so I couldn't understand what was trying to be said.
Well, I also think there's maybe a grammatical fix I can make on my part, because it seems like the end of the sentence could add a little more. But there's more and more of an expectation for colleges to meet students where they are. Very often there's an artificial expectation of where students are expected to be. So the expectation in a lot of the state initiatives and accreditation is meet the students where they are, so that the college is student ready in the sense of we are taking learners where they are and making the improvements that they need based on their levels of experience and whatnot. But I think we can clarify the grammar of it to make it, and I think ending with student ready is a little awkward. That's my fault.
No fault.
But it really is, how do you make teaching and learning meet the student and scaffold their learning about where they are? And the more that we can do that, the more we can individualize direct instruction or set up groups that help students bridge their own learning. But we can make that fix.
That makes total sense to me. I can explain that to my community. We're prepared to meet our students where they are.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I should have wrote that in the first place, trustee. Yes, that is what we're doing.
All right. Lauren hit on one of mine. I assume you guys saw the typo related to the amount of the bond. It's not a $235 million bond. It was on page 31 of my report.
Well, I can't guarantee that we caught that.
And Actionable Improvement Plan 7 under the evaluation subheading.
Okay, and thank you for that. That helped. That was great directions. Number 7, you said?
Mhm.
And we have 235 million, and that is incorrect?
Yes.
Okay. I'll fix that typo.
All right. Okay, I have a couple more, but Lauren, that's about where you were, so I want to let other people be annoyed with you for a while.
All right, well, let's see. I guess I think most of my questions have been answered by virtue of the fact that I think it's also a term of art as to whether or not you've completed any one of these things, or they're still in process because or in progress, because everything in some sense is always in progress. But I will go ahead. I don't have anything until my page 40, Yuri. Do you have anything before page 40?
If page 40 has helped me understand the tables, that is what I had next as well.
Okay. All right. So I'll go to, my page 40, which is institutional reporting on quality improvements, recommendation 6. I think it's the.
Is it on the institution set standards?
You're getting up to it. You're getting up to it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have Dr. Ryan warming up in the bullpen here because I don't know what happened to our. Oh, that first part was learning. Wait a minute. Why?
So I'm looking for the. Yeah, did we take out? Maybe we took out the table. In which case.
I don't know why that table would be. So let me look for it.
It was recommendation 6.
Oh, recommendation 6.
There it is.
And then I'm scrolling.
And I have.
Oh, you're talking, which, is it the reference of the tables from TRACTAT?
Yes, that's right. Pre-TRACTAT and TRACTAT.
Yeah, so a number of us, Adria and Jeannie and Keith and John and a bunch of us got together. Those were tables pulled from a standard report, a standard pulling from TRACTAT.
Mm-hmm.
And we produced the table from there. But as we began to look at it, the tables itself, or at least some of the cells, particularly participation rate, for example, was not necessarily accurate because we have assigned individuals who go in on behalf of departments to make them. So the report of, we were indicating that we're making greater progress in participation, but the numbers in the table were actually run by standard reports, and some of the discussions were, well, yeah, that number is going to be artificially low because that's asking every faculty member in the denominator, and we have particularly assigned people who go in and make these updates. So what we, after some long discussions and examinations of our math and examinations of the conclusions, we took out the tables related to the student learning because the table actually created more confusion than it did explain. And so we then found ourselves of trying to explain this particular things in the table, And then what we decided to do was put the table on the cutting room floor and instead add a couple of deep paragraphs explaining what we've done and areas where we feel that we need to improve in communication and whatnot. I guess, Trustee Steck, I'm 3 for 3 with you. You're asking the same questions that we addressed.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And there was a paragraph that described the table that I didn't think was supportive of the table, but that's probably because we decided that the table was wrong. Can you scroll down further to, or at least the table was misleading. What's the conclusion on this one? Have we said that the conclusion is okay, my next question, which is substantive, is the conclusion is this recommendation has been met. And I no longer know the data. I only knew the data that was actually in the earlier version of the report. And it didn't look to me like those data reflected anything like, well, we're doing all our courses now. And I think the question is, I guess the real question is, what's the goal of recommendation 6? And you've already talked about this in the context of another recommendation. Is the goal to increase participation in the program, in the course evaluation and program evaluation issue? Or is it is it to increase participation rates, or is it to do outreach to encourage increased participation rates? And if you read the recommendation, I suppose the recommendation itself, which is the italicized thing that you got us on now, you could probably go either way. But I was interpreting it as, well, the real goal here is not to do more outreach, not to have more study sessions with faculty, but rather the goal was to have faculty increase their participation rates in these course evaluations and program evaluations. And the data that were in this recommendation section, I didn't think reflected that at all. And so I was kind of shocked to see that we are self-reporting that we have met that recommendation. If we have, then that's great. But I don't know, and the data that were in the previous version of this document didn't lead me to that conclusion or anything like it. So that I was kind of surprised at that. And maybe when you reevaluate this whole section, which I haven't had the opportunity to read because it's been changed, maybe you could look critically at that section.
You have had the opportunity.
Say it again? I couldn't hear what that was. Oh, well, that wasn't from, it was, we haven't had the opportunity to look at the newer version of this thing, but you might want to double check to see whether you really believe that recommendation has been met.
Yeah, we did. I think that the conclusions that you have were the questions that were coming from readers as they edited it. And we went back and reflected on what was happening in 2016 when the team came out, what was the status of the college and what's happening now. And I think it was the conclusion of all of us, including the SLO coordinator and those who have taken a look at it, that if the goal was to strengthen the link and make the cycles more intentional, that we've in fact done that. But we certainly can take a look and invite you to take a look at the amended section. And if you still have questions, we can answer them through.
Sure. Thank you. Yuri, does that answer your question too on that particular?
I had the exact same question, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Can I go? I'm looking, I have to look at my notes. So give me a sec. Yuri, do you have one?
I do.
We can tag team this.
On the, my page 43 was talking about the SLO symposium. I think you undersold the district. You also had trustees who attended that symposium, so.
Okay, I'm sorry. If you would, let me see if I can control F and find symposium. I certainly don't want, that is true. And we have a trustee register. Okay.
We had several trustees attend, actually.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. We certainly don't want to admit things that are strong. Thank you, I will add that.
And my next one is on page 46, Lauren. So.
Hey, go ahead, your turn.
So my page 46, which is recommendation 7 in the introduction.
Okay.
Again, it might be one of those terms of art. It was paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. So the last paragraph in the introduction where you talk about MPC enrollment management processes are evidence-based, system-driven, transparent, and focused on student needs. So I didn't understand system-driven.
So I could certainly ask John, who was one of the key writers and contributors in the section. I have an idea of what it's meant, but John, I certainly don't want to speak with you if you're on the line and had a different term, use of the term.
Sure, I'm here, and I am also trying to match up the section you're referring to with the new document that's posted. I believe the language might have been edited to be different because I don't see that, but I do, in general, if we talk about system-driven processes, we're talking about not system as in a specific technology platform, but the fact that we have systems and processes in place to operationalize decision-making and to follow through with specific processes and procedures.
Yes.
I do see it now, a system-driven, transparent. So based on our systems or systems and processes, we can certainly wordsmith that a little differently to make that clear.
I realize that you all are writing this for your colleagues across the state. And so these are probably things they're going to see. And I'm looking at it from a layperson's eyes, and it's just like, how do I explain this to someone? It's kind of, so it's helpful to hear that. When I look at that paragraph, it makes me wonder, student need is the last thing in that series of commas. And is that really the order in which we as a district approach it? You don't have to answer it now. It's just kind of.
I don't know if John got the question.
Certainly happy to revisit that sentence.
I guess it's more of a philosophical approach thought, you know?
Well, and when you
we
read
putting
the
at the center of all those.
Yeah, completely. Point well taken. When you read the sentence, none of the items before student need refer to any other group of people. So students are still the first and foremost group served by the process. It's just talking about an evidence-based, process-driven, transparent process to meet students' needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
yeah.
We can reframe that.
Yeah. You do what you guys think is best, but I can understand. I can explain that to my husband. So that's, good.
Okay.
So we already talked about recommendation 10. So I don't have anything until page 64. Lauren, did you have anything before that?
I think I'm all the way to 65 for substantive stuff. I have little niggling stuff, but nobody cares about that. So, like,
all right.
That kind of thing. But yeah, do 64, I'll do 65.
So 64 for me is under Student Learning Outcomes Standard 1B2 under the Growth Opportunities subheading, right before Course Program and Institutional Improvements subheading.
Is that a recommendation, action improvement plan, Trustee?
It's reflecting on improving institutional performance section.
Oh, okay, okay.
And it's the first one of those, Standard 1B2.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead. I'm with you now, Trustee. Where?
Okay. It's right before the Course Program and Institutional Improvements subheading. So
Okay.
keep going up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's the page that starts with all of the sample pedagogical improvements.
Oh, there it is. I've got it.
Yes, there we go. Okay, so right after where it says SLO 19, the college has added dashboards to provide faculty and others with trend data is also another growth area for this institution. So my question was, is it being done or has it been done? So go back up. You've added dashboards and trend data is another growth area.
Well, we certainly have added dashboards for faculty to be able to access information. That's true. I'm looking for the second portion of your question, though.
Kind of an incomplete sentence if you read it. Just read through the sentence here. I think it might be an actual typo.
The college has added dashboards to provide faculty and others with trend data. Yeah, I think it's more of a typo or a grammatical error that we need to fix. Yes. I think what we were trying to get to the point is we've added them, but it's also a growth area. You know, faculty are using them and finding them positive, so we need to expand them. We're doing them, but it's also an area of growth. But I think that's more of the grammar fails the sentence as opposed to what we're doing. I think we can fix that.
Okay, awesome. Then I'm done.
All right, then I have a couple questions on the just in the same section on starting on engineering 12, which is on the next page. These are just examples.
Yeah, these were pulled from the track dat narratives that individuals.
Sure, and probably you're left with what they have written already. But in engineering 12, the instructor will use formula quizzes technology, and I never heard of formula quizzes technology. So I figure that's kind of that's jargonistic, and maybe there's a better way of saying that. Do you see where I am?
I do. I wouldn't want to speak for the engineering. I know that that there are now quizzes and even areas where you can build the equation right on the screen, and the computer provides the answer. But we certainly can outreach, and maybe when the person was typing their summary, we can certainly find out what that is and explain it better.
Sure. Well, that tripped me up. And then down for nursing 153.
Yes, sir.
Same thing. Instructor will emphasize the expectation, that students complete the full 500 hours of residency despite not being compensated, and also persuade the facility that the residents need to be compensated appropriately. It sounds like the instructor has to persuade a facility that to pay the nursing students for working there. And I just can't help but thinking that that's out of the instructor's area of responsibility. I'm sure that the instructor could attempt to persuade, but it's hard to believe that the instructor has to persuade somebody. That's kind of that's an overstatement, it seems. So I would add attempt to persuade, just because. Does that make sense?
I had a little bit of clarification as well.
I can reach to the faculty member. Yeah, these were extracted from there. And
yeah, I know.
And Lauren, Dr. Seck, I can add just a little bit to what Bob previously mentioned. These were actual submissions from faculty in their learning assessment. And so these are evidence. These are not part of the report narrative that we've written. So it would be inappropriate for us to go back and tamper with evidence in a submission like this.
You're right. Nonetheless, it doesn't read well. Okay, so Yuri, do you have anything else? I'm up to 1B3.
Nope.
1B3 is another table. At least in my version, it's another table.
this table should be kept because these are the institution set standards, and we knew that these tables were correct, but I'm looking for them. Here we go. And I'll have Dr. Ryan in the bullpen to answer any questions I can't field.
Okay. I just didn't understand. I'm sure that you guys, you folks look at this table and you know exactly what you're looking at all the time, but I was having a tough time trying to interpret it. I see actual, and that's what we have. I'm looking down in the left-hand column, actual leading to stretch. So the actual numbers are 74.22, et cetera. The stretch numbers are 75%. That makes sense. I get that. And I sort of get it. That's for course completion rates. And then for certificates, I see a 2% increase that's not there for course completion rates, although I just can't help but thinking that maybe that, maybe that's also a 2%. But what I'm seeing for the certificates is, it looks to me like N's rather than percents. And maybe that's the right way of doing it, but I was having a tough time reconciling the first two rows with the subsequent rows. and I was having a tough time reconciling for in that middle column percent increase, the one row that doesn't have a percent increase with the other ones that do, and then looking at the percent increases for the numbers, the raw ends for each of those subsequent three things. The question had to do with just ease of understanding what the table's trying to say.
Sure.
So that was my
Trustee Ryan, are you on the call? Trustee Ryan. Maybe I have your political ambitions already in my mind. Dr. Ryan, how about that? We keep you
I'm here.
at your present job.
Yeah. So these are the 4 metrics on which we are required by Accjc to set both floors, the baseline, the institution set standard, as well as stretch goals. And what we did is we aligned the stretch goals with what we did for the Vision for Success reporting. And you may recall that report from last spring. So for these metrics, you're correct that course completion rates are always reported as a percentage, whereas the other metrics are reported in ends, and that's just the way the reporting is done. The percentages that you're seeing, it lines up across, so the 2% that you're seeing is for the certificates. The 5% is for the degrees, and 5.5% is for the degrees, and then the 5% is for the transfers. So I think this might just be a formatting thing where we could make some adjustments to the formatting to make it really clear where those percentage increases are lined up with.
And how it works. So you have 3 years of actuals, and then you have stretch goals for the next 4 years out.
Correct.
So where the 2% is for certificates, there's the 2% and then a blank and then an arrow. Are the 247 and the 251 and the 256 and 261, is that an increase of 2% off of the 243? And so we're not looking at the 256 or the 114 at all. Is that how to read that or interpret that table?
Yeah. So when we set the Vision for Success goals as an institution, we, after looking at our data and having discussions with the different groups, we decided that a 2% increase annually was appropriate for us. And that is based on, it was based on the baseline year, which I'm looking at the numbers and they're.
It looks like the baseline year for that one's 243. So it would have been 1819 because 247 is about 2% more than 243 and 251 is about 2% more than 247. And then it goes up by 5. So it must be that the 243 is the baseline year, which means we're adding, we have the other years of data before 1819, but they're kind of irrelevant for the story you want to tell.
That is correct. And we did a lot of analysis around this, and we noticed that for some metrics, it was consistently going up. For others, like you'll see that there was a big jump for certificates. We had a lot of discussion around that and what had actually occurred. And we knew that we couldn't expect, we had made some process changes, which accounted for that big jump from the 16-17 year to the 17-18 year for certificates. And we knew that that type of increase going forward just wasn't reasonable, but that a 2% increase made more sense for us.
Yeah, I get that. It was just hard for me to, and it could indeed be the case that everybody, the real readers of this document, will know exactly what this table means without having to be spoon-fed it. But for me, it was hard for me to understand what you were trying to get at. And that's just, because I'm used to seeing the data arrayed maybe slightly differently.
Yeah, and this table actually was designed to align fairly closely with the way that we report the data annually to Accjc for both the institutions at standards and the stretch goals.
Yeah, and the previous years before 1819 are there just for context.
They're there for context. And again, that's also the way that we report data to the Accjc annually. We're reporting 3 years of data, and then what the standard is, and then what the stretch goal is.
You get it? And I thank you. That's you explained it perfectly well to me, so now I understand it, which I didn't before. And that's my last question, my last substantive thing. After that, it goes to the essays, and I think the essays were all nicely done.
Great. So, Bob, if you could stop sharing your screen.
Yes.
We will look to, first I'll look back to the trustees if there are any new questions that have arisen for Trustee Johnson, Gustafson, or Green based on our, Marilyn's like, oh my God, me too. Next time, just form a subcommittee for Yuri and Lauren to review the document. So not seeing any hands from the trustees, we'll turn it to the public. Is there any member of the public that would like to make a comment on the draft midterm report? You can raise your hand using the participants tab, or if you're on the phone, press *9. All right, seeing none. Oh, go ahead, Bert.
Good afternoon, folks. I'll be very brief in my comments. And first of all, thank you for allowing me to participate. I'm just very appreciative of the work that's taken place over the period of time, given the difficult environment and certainly the fiscal challenges that the college had faced several years ago. I'm proud to be a part of MPC's extended community, and I just appreciate all the efforts and the focused efforts, if you will, of the board and staff and the hard work that's taken place. In the readout here, it's very evident that you've been focusing, and the progress that's taken place is really what's important. And so I'm anxious to continue to hear the follow-up on that, and just very proud of the work that you folks have done. It's very representative of the college, the board, and the staff and the administration. I really think very highly of MPC as a higher learning institution, and I'm just proud to see that you folks have progressed the way you have. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Look at that big old smile from Mr. Martin over there. And I hope that everybody on the team is sitting there with one of those big old smiles, because it was, as I said before, a real pleasure to read this report and just get a glimpse into the tremendous amount of work that has been going on behind the scenes, in spite of everything that we've been doing over the last few years. So before we close it out, if there are any final comments from the trustees, there's no action to take today. No, so let me exit this and make sure I do this correctly. All right, so we will, oh, Trustee Stack, go ahead.
I just want to say one more time that, more or less repeating what I think the general sentiments are in this group. This was a fine report, and it is documentation of just how much really good and really important work we've done. And I use that's a royal we, it's you guys did it all. We're just the, we get to be nearby. We bask in the reflected glory of all the hard work that gets done. And this document is really impressive. And I think it's an accurate representation of what it is we have accomplished. So I'm very excited about it. So thank you for doing it.
Yes. And for those you can't see, you're getting a thumbs up from Trustee Green. So all the way around, we really thank you for this opportunity to have done a deep dive with you on this first read, and look forward to the second read, and I look forward to getting to sign this report and send it off to the Accjc. So, all right, with that, we will go ahead and adjourn this special meeting at 4:26 p.m. and see y'all back here in, I don't know what, like 14 days or so.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.